Hello, I've been meaning to make this video for quite some time. I'm going to talk about Nikola Tesla's quotes on frequency, wavelength, and vibration. But before doing that, I'd like to make a mention of something that basically the entire world is either entirely clueless of or completely takes for granted about the countless, per every millisecond, the countless billions of frequencies that pass through our bodies and are perpetually around us. I mean, absolutely unbelievable. I used to do ham radio, Kilo Delta 4, Papa Whiskey Juliet. Hey, how you doing there? Ham radio stuff. I actually grew up at a very young age with ham radio. Ham radio people are pretty awful, honestly. They're kind of obnoxious, but that's not the point. That people have no idea what surrounds them. I mean, I have a collection of compact. I used to have some really expensive ham radios, and at any point in time you could use like a 9-band receiver and pick up the entire world. Nobody uses shortwave receivers anymore. However, they're great for emergencies. Like before, a few hours ago, I was actually cleaning up this old radio and I was picking up Japan. This is just a little 9-band shortwave receiver. But I mean, if people actually understood, the countless things, not talking about literally just cell phone frequencies, which people know about, but I mean, GPS, satellite transmissions, where do you think, your dish on the back of your house is getting Dish Network or direct TV signals from? Of course, they're getting them from satellites and orbits, and they're actually putting out about 5 watts of power. But radio, AM, FM, shortwave, gamma rays, just absolutely unbelievable that you could literally be 4 stories underground, and if you had a decent antenna, you could pick up the entire world and listen to, I mean, unbelievable things. The things that humanity takes for granted, they don't actually think about it because it's just part of their everyday lives, and it doesn't even pop into their head. Their Wi-Fi signal, their router signal, their cell phone, absolutely everything. And this, of course, actually blends into discussing Nikola Tesla's famous quote. But nobody's actually ever penetrated, not that I know of, I've never read anybody's commentary that they actually understand what the hell Nikola Tesla said about this and why it's actually important. And he's actually talking about one and the same thing when he talks about 3 things. So let's actually do the Nikola Tesla quote and actually talk about what it actually means and why that quote is so important to Nikola Tesla. Tesla said, if you want to find out the secrets of the universe, well, maybe what follows after this is probably important, because Tesla just said, if you want to find out the secrets of the universe. I don't know about you, but that sounds like it might be slightly important. The secrets of the universe, you need to think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Well, no branch of science, by their own admission, has ever defined the term energy. No branch of science has actually ever defined a field in itself, of itself, by itself. Of course, some of us kind of have an idea about frequency, but what was Nikola Tesla talking about lumping these 3 things together? Well, they're actually all one and the same thing, because energy is directly relational to both frequency and wavelength. The smaller the space, the higher the capacitance. Completely, like a bigger box will hold more stuff. You see, this is how humans think, because this is, how we're born. Like, if you buy a bigger box, you could stuff more crap into it, right? Yeah, a smaller box won't hold as much. Well, fields and energy are exactly the opposite of that. It's not my opinion or my feeling or my belief, it's an actual fact. And when actually Tesla is talking about the vibration, what he's actually referring to is the amplitude. The vibration, of course, and we're talking about TEM, transverse electromagnetism. And of course, most people don't even, register in their brains that light is the exact same thing as radio broadcasts, is the exact same thing as gamma radiation. And I have logically, through Occam's razor, put forth and said many countless times that the most fundamental particle in the universe is nothing other than, I don't know if it's like 40 or 60 or 100 magnitudes greater than that of gamma radiation, but the most fundamental particle of the universe is nothing other than, and I say this jokingly because it's kind of funny, and yet accurate at the same time, hard light. In other words, super high energy light is basically a ZTP, or zero-time particle, or the fundamental particle. But let me actually show you a little thing here. And I'm actually doing this representationally to, like above here, looking at the actual frequency. Let's actually take a look at this first. I don't know if you know much about frequency and wavelength. I mean, here is a unit of time for frequency, is the number of waves that actually pass a point per unit of time. Of course, wavelength is the distance between two identical points on consecutive waves, represented by W here. And of course, over here we actually have amplitude. So this is a given frequency, and of course, this is the longitudinal dielectric, or the point of propagation of the electromagnetism, whether that be light or gamma radiation or radio. You know, all of that's the exact same stuff. And people don't actually seem to mentally connect those things. Well, radio is this, and light is that. No, it's the exact same thing. Well, what separates out gamma radiation, which is incredibly deadly, and radio waves and visible spectrum light? Well, the only thing that actually separates them is this: frequency, wavelength, and amplitude. And when Nikola Tesla actually makes the tripartite reference to energy, frequency, and vibration, when he refers to vibration, he's actually referring to amplitude. Actually, whether that be circular polarization or linear polarization, is referring to the transverse components of electromagnetism. Yeah. So let's actually take a look at this. Remember, like I said, humans think that, you know, something larger, which conventionally, when it doesn't pertain to fields, is accurate. You know, something larger is heavier and it contains more stuff. And the same should be true of energy, but it's exactly the opposite. And the reason why it's exactly the opposite is the reason why you don't understand field theory. It's extremely simple. Everything is a conjugate geometry of the universe, which is both dielectricity and magnetism. Yeah. This is also the direct relational representation between voltage and amperage. Yeah. Magnetism is over here, dielectricity is over there. It's also the case, like when you actually spread AC current lines further apart, you can actually contain more magnetism, but the closer you bring them together, yeah, the more dielectricity, the more power you can actually have. Smaller the space, the higher the capacitance. So let's take a look at these two frequencies here. Now, the top is a really small frequency. Of course, this would be a really small wavelength, you know, very, very short distance between identical points, right? And of course, we actually have a frequency, or the number of waves that actually pass per unit of time is much greater than down here. Let's just say that up here we actually have electromagnetism of gamma radiation. However, actually gamma radiation would be infinitely smaller than this. And down here, we actually have infrared. A very low energy light, or regular red light. I mean, infrared is just outside of the spectrum of visible light. Now, S, of course, stands for spatial volume. Now, have you noticed something, the proportionality of what is seemingly kind of like Alice in Wonderland sort of stuff, is that the larger the frequency, the less power we have, the larger spatial volume we actually have here, in the case of infrared radiation, for example. But the energy is incredibly small. So let's take a look at these two comparatively. And these are obviously opposite ends of the spectrum, nearly so. You can actually go further than infrared, of course, you go down to radio and whatnot, but we're looking at infrared versus gamma. We actually have a large spatial volume, but incredibly low energy potential. Up here, we have an extremely small spatial volume, but a huge energy quotient. Gamma radiation is incredibly deadly. Yeah, that's the stuff that's emitted in nuclear explosions and, you know, Chernobyl, you know, where all those people died. That was gamma radiation that, like, instantly, well, not instantly, but near instantly, you know, it killed them. Gamma radiation. So extremely high energy, but very small spatial volume. Down here we have a very large spatial volume, but an incredibly small energy. So you see the representation between these two? Fields are exactly the opposite of conventional, let's say, voluminous material that, of course, human beings are used to. There's something, how large it is and what it can contain. Smaller the space, the higher the capacitance. So Nikola Tesla's secret quote, too, not a secret, and I've actually said this about countless things in metaphysics. The things that are big-time secrets in metaphysics, they're only secrets because they are unpenetratable by simpler, less illuminated minds. That is the only real secret. The secret of the secrets, literally, both of field theory and hardcore metaphysics. Like someone, it was like you could take the most erudite person on earth, that knows English better than anybody, and you just have them read Plotinus. They can't figure it out. They can't penetrate it. Well, I read this, and I read it correctly, but I don't understand what it's saying. The secret of the secret is that it is unpenetratable by simpler minds that don't have insight. They don't actually have a primer. Kind of like we couldn't translate ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs until we found the primer. The primer, of course, was the Rosetta Stone. The primer of field theory is one of two things, actually one of several things: capacitance, resistance, permeability, permittivity, but force and motion, inertia, and acceleration. But the secret that actually Tesla is talking about is one and the same thing. When Nikola Tesla says the secret to the universe, you need to think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. He's actually referring to one and the same thing. When we actually referring to vibration, Nikola Tesla he's referring to the amplitude. Yeah. But the larger the amplitude, the smaller the energy. So when he's actually talking about energy, he's also talking about vibration, which, of course, here would be representational to amplitude. When Nikola Tesla is talking about vibration, he's talking about amplitude. Yeah? Because this is literally the vibration, i.e. the amplitude of a set frequency and a set wavelength. Yes? These three things are all proportional to the big E. So when he's actually saying... He's not talking about three separate things, Nikola Tesla. He's not talking about, the secret is three things: energy over here, frequency over here, and vibration over here. No. The amplitude and the wavelength and the frequency are all proportional and wrapped up in the big E. So energy is frequency, wavelength, and amplitude, or what he actually calls vibration. They're not three things. He could literally say the energy package. He could say the energy packet. I mean, you could actually take a unit, and this is, of course, where quantum physics actually came up with a nonsense BS of the photon. They actually took the dielectric pulse perturbation along the longitudinal propagation of light, and which is, of course, rarefactions and compressions, and they call that a photon. But a photon, of course, does not exist. It's a conceptual abstraction. But these three things are interchangeable. The amplitude or vibration and the wavelength and frequency are all proportionalities within themselves, just like ice, water, and steam are all referent to water. Ice, water, and steam, anybody that has 5 brain cells knows exactly the same thing. It's water. Ice, water, and steam are just different temperature and pressure modalities of water, right? Yes, of course they are. Anybody that has a kindergarten education knows that. So Nikola Tesla, and is really famous, because people love to quote this quote to me from Nikola Tesla. And Nikola Tesla said, the secret of the universe, you got to think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Yes, but do you understand that? Well, no. Well, don't quote it to me. What's really important is not to parrot what Tesla said. Tesla said. Well, that's nice. I'm glad you're interested in Tesla, but Tesla would prefer, so would anybody that praises wisdom, and understanding things, that you actually understand what he said, not repeat what Tesla said. Yeah, okay. How about understanding what he said? He's talking about one thing. He's actually talking about the tripartite circuit that makes up energy. Energy and frequency and wavelength are these three things that are all one and the exact same thing. Kind of like light and illumination. There's no such thing as light versus illumination. Illumination is the extrinsic attribute of light. Light and illumination are one and the same thing. Principle and attribute. Yes? They are one thing, principle and attribute. The frequency and vibration, or frequency and wavelength and amplitude, are the attributes of the energy. One paints the picture of the other. If you know the frequency and the amplitude, then you know the energy. If you know the energy, you know the frequency and amplitude, or what he calls vibration, of the field perturbation, specifically the ether perturbation, because that's all the field is an ether perturbation modality. Yes, that's correct. And ether perturbation modalities are one of two kinds: dielectricity and magnetism. Electricity is phi times psi equals Q in Planck of electrification, i.e. electricity is just a hybrid of magnetism and dielectricity. This makes explaining how an electromagnet works and what an electromagnet is really, really easy. So this is the secret of Nikola Tesla's famous quote that everybody loves to quote to me. They parrot it to me is what they really do. But they don't understand it. So here you have an explanation of Nikola Tesla's quote and why it's important. That's divinely simple. That is Occam's razor. That is what I've said since day one. Simplicity is divinity. When he's talking about energy, frequency, vibration, it'd be like me talking about ice, water, and steam. Now, that's a better analogy. Well, ice, water, and steam's all water. What are you referring to? Well, yeah, I'm referring to, that one entity. Yes, it's literally that simple. I hope you understood this because I made this pretty simple. If you like these videos, you can always click the link below because any donation is greatly appreciated because I don't sell anything. I don't. Some people say I'm like an online teacher of ancient arcana. There's a great word to learn, arcana. You don't hear that word said very often, but you should learn it. Arcana. Yeah. What does that mean? Google search it. Lux e veritas.